I think we can start. It's 11:15. Good morning. Thank you for joining our session about RAP. I'm Markus. I'm working for Eclipse source since many years now, and since this year I'm leading together with Ralf, who is not here today, the RAP project. I'm usually using RAP for projects with my customers as a consultant. But within the RAP team, I'm taking part in the daily development with the other committers. I'm here with Tim. Tim is a long year, many years a committer on the RAP project, and he's the JavaScript expert in our team. So if there are any questions or any problems that can be solved in JavaScript, I'm sure Tim will find a solution for them. Today I'm talking about the RAP 2.x stream, what we released over the past 12 months, the 2.0, 2.1 and the upcoming 2.2 release. And then we are having several looks into different incubator projects, because we have a RAP Incubator project where we are trying out new things and where we develop new components. Let me start with looking back. RAP 1.0, 1.x was known as the RCP, or the rich Ajax platform for the web browser. One of the goals that we had, and maybe you've been in the talk from Stefan yesterday from Allianz about single sourcing. One of our goals was to have a single code base with a workbench-based application and to run the same RCP code base in a web browser, and you have the same look and feel. You share the same code base, you have to change only a few little code snippets. With 2.x we try to open things up. One part of this opening up, or open the platform up, was we tried to make it possible for writing remote applications. Remote applications that are not only running on a web browser. That's this example here. This is our web client. We think about different clients. For instance, a mobile platform, a native mobile platform running on an Android client, or a native platform on an iOS client, but you can think about a cache terminal as well, or an ATM system. All those dedicated clients could use this remote protocol and can communicate with a standardized JSON protocol with a RAP backend server. This was our main idea behind 2.x, and then after a couple of years we found out that we need to change and adjust some pieces in our API. And to mark this breaking change, or to make this visible, we were using the 2.x version for this. By the way, what you're seeing here, the slide deck, that's a RAP application, and it's running in a web browser, full screen. One of the major goals was this API cleanup with a migration guide. So if you have a 1.x version or 1.x RAP-based version of your software and you want to migrate to 2.x, you can follow the instructions in the migration guide, and everything should be working after changing those things. Another thing that we achieved is the JSON protocol. I'm coming back to this later. We have a new client services API. That's an API that allows you to retrieve data from the client or do certain things on the client. We have a custom widgets API for the first time. So if you want to integrate own widgets, or if you need to integrate a special JavaScript library or an additional external component, you can achieve this with a custom widget API. We have a new JEE compatibility mode. I'm telling you in more details what's this all about. And we released our commercial client Tabris for Android and for iOS. That's using the protocol, and that allows you to run this your application on a small mobile device. And to make this visible, our change, we renamed our project from Rich Ajax Platform to Remote Application, because remote applications are now our main goal. One of the main parts of the overhaul of the API was to make it more visible the different contexts. You have to know you're working in a multi-user environment with multiple sessions, possibly with multiple browser tabs. And what you see on the top, that's the servlet container. It's provided by Jetty or Tomcat or by WebSphere JBoss. Then you have the servlet context. Again, this is maybe your WAR file. It comes with static resources, it comes with servlets. And one of those servlets has this HTTP session. That's the HTTP session that's shared for all browser tabs. That's what the container provides you with. Then you have the RAP application. Within the RAP application, you have several UI sessions, and all UI sessions are mapped to an HTTP session. So if you're programming a RAP application, you have to decide where to store things. If it's global data, application-wide data, you're using the application context to store your objects, and then you can access them from all your sessions. Or you're storing things in your UI session. That's really your small little thing. And this UI session is the representation of your browser tab. And this change allows us, or made it possible, that we could change or implement a multi-browser tab browsing for 2.1. Thank you. I was talking about the JSON protocol that we have. This is a little snippet here. Every JSON message starts with a header and a request counter and with a number of operations. We have 6 different types of operations. In this case, it's a create operation, and it creates widget 4 with an ID W4, and it's a button that's being created. A push button, and with a property, I'm a button with a text property on it. And the second operation is we are attaching a selection listener on the same widget to get information about selection events. We have 6 different operation types: create, destroy, destroy, set for setting attributes, call for calling methods or functions, listen and notify for event handling. And this JSON protocol makes it really easy to implement new clients. Another interesting thing was the client services API. To get an ID, you can always use RWT get client, and then you get a client object. And this client object is, if we are talking about a web client, it's of the type web client. And then you can ask this client object with a service locator pattern, client get service, and you tell them what kind of service you want to get. The client info service, for instance, and the client info service allows you to get information of the time zone of the client, or the locale for language-specific things. There are a number of other services implemented in the web client. For instance, the JavaScript executor service allows you to execute small JavaScript snippets. There's another JavaScript service which allows you to load external JavaScript code, or you can use the browser navigation service to add entries to the browser navigation and history. On one of the first slides I was talking about the new JEE compatibility mode. If we are talking about a standard SWT application, you've always the UI thread, where you're doing the read and dispatch of the events, the main event loop. And this UI thread is always running. So in the past, or with the SWT compatible mode on the left-hand side, a request comes in from the browser to the server, that's the red part, and then we are starting the UI thread. And the UI thread is running until the session will be shut down, closed. A second request will come in from the browser and will be dispatched to the already running UI thread. But this is against the JEE rules, because there's always the overhead of running a thread all the time for every user session. We changed this with the JEE compatibility mode, where we're doing our own operations just in the thread, in the request thread. And this allows us to, for instance, clustering and everything else. It's a very lightweight approach. There are some drawbacks. You cannot use blocking API, such as some dialogues. We've written a dialog wrapper to overcome this problem, but you have to do something with the dialogues. And the Eclipse workbench code is not running as well. RAP 2.1, we had only 4 months to develop RAP 2.1, but we changed our release cycle. We will release not only one major release per year, so every 6 months. We had a few browser improvements on our table, on our roadmap. We implemented the multiple browser tab, very important. I think every modern web application should use this. And if you have many browser tabs open, you need to think about the cleanup. And this is done if you terminate a UI session. You can get a notification and you can clean up your memory then. Additionally, we implemented an API for keyboard shortcuts for mnemonics and accelerators, and we did some performance improvements in form of creating our own JSON parser and integrated this into our RAP.
Okay, thank you. So for RAP 2.2 we had this time around a little bit more focus on the UI features of RAP. 2.2 will release at the end of December, so we are now in a 6-month release cycles. And the 3 major new features are scripting, tooltips, or redesigned tooltips, and RowTemplates. So scripting, this is kind of a pet project of mine. Usually if you run application code in RAP, the client has to send an HTTP request, the server executes the application code, the listener, and sends the response, the updates for the UI. For most cases this is okay. If you press a button in the browser, you're used that there may be a few hundred milliseconds until something changes. But there are some cases which we'll show now that where the feedback needs to be immediate. So, and how this is done is that you are now able to write event handler in JavaScript, and those are then executed directly in the browser and no HTTP request is involved. So for this example we have an input validation for this text field. You can type in it numbers, that's okay, and as soon as you type a character it's getting yellowish, but there's a slight delay. And if you use the same with a text field that uses ClientScripting, you get instant feedback. And we put a lot of emphasis on making this as similar to the SWT API as possible. We know that most RAP developers are Java developers and not exactly keen on developing JavaScript. And those use cases are usually for very little features that are, I don't know, a few lines of code and not more. And we also provide some information, some hints in the documentation how to get used to JavaScript. Okay. So it's just to show how similar the code can look. We have this validation code from just now in Java and in JavaScript. And of course, the keywords look different. And we have some aspects like here the regular expressions that are not exactly the same. But overall, it looks more or less like the same code, the same logic. Currently, not all widgets support scripting. 9 widgets and almost all events that are supported in RAP can be used. We may expand that in the future. You cannot create or dispose widgets. It's not there to write it in UI, in scripting, in JavaScript. It's there to provide a workaround for the rare cases where you cannot accept latency. And we have some few more examples like this date input. And here it's quite interesting, a nice use case is you can type 4 characters, and if you're done, you know, jump to the next text field, and backwards kick into the screen.
Next one.
Okay. We have new tooltips. So first of all, they have a new default look. It's white on black. However, this is entirely optional. If you like the old look, you can still use the old look. It's all themable. They have some beautiful features like this little pointer that's now always pointing towards the center or some specific area of the widget it belongs to. The tooltips appear faster. They're usually not hidden until you do a specific action, and that action may be dependent on the widget it belongs to. So for a toolbar, it disappears as soon as you click or move them out of the widget. But for example, for the scale down here, if you, the one below, if you do that, it stays as long as you using the widget, even if you press the mouse button. And also as a side note, this little change of the tooltip text is done in scripting. So it's another example how you can use that. If you would do that by the server turnaround, it would not be as immediate. And oh yeah, just one back before I forget.
Sorry.
Not yet implemented, but we plan to support HTML in tooltips, so that you perhaps even put navigation links inside the tooltip, so you can show a tooltip, see a link to another part of the application, and then directly go there. RowTemplates. So we have one of the, in my opinion, most awesome features of RAP is the tree and the table, which can do a lot of things that the SWT table cannot. However, until now, you were not able to make it look really pretty and modern like you're used for maybe web applications. And we are going to address that now. There was probably previously the option to insert HTML into the table, but you do not want to do that. At least not to make different layouts or add new features. It's okay to make some portion of text underlined or something, but if you really want to make it really rich, you do not want to use markup, especially if you are not very keen on working out the different quirks of different browsers. So what we are now featuring is RowTemplates, which allow you to customize how a tree or table item is rendered. You can also make some portion of the item clickable to make it interactive. And you do not have to worry at all about HTML or browser issues, it's all Java. And we also plan to do this to possibly support other widgets other than tree and table in the future. And it will also be supported in Kepler, where you could not use the HTML. Okay. So this is an example. This is a traditional RAP table. You see we have at the top we have the different columns, and yeah, it's not exactly exciting. And now if we apply a template to this, now I have an entirely different layout. This is still the same data. You do not change anything about your JFace code or something. You just change the layout. We added the static elements like the email and phone label, or like this little button at the right side. And you can even make the elements clickable. So if you now click on the email portion, it knows, I want to email Marcus. And just to demonstrate another example how you can, again, totally change the layout if you make another template, which in this case is pretty ugly, but just to see how this works. Okay. You're back again.
Yeah. But then we are planning Luna, or we're now in the process of planning for Luna. Our RAP 2.3 release will be released next June. Right now we talked about 2.2 plans, and 2.2 will be released end of year in December. So 2.3, it's still not yet finalized what we are going to do with, or what we are going to implement with RAP 2.3, but there are some ideas that we have. One thing that we saw over the last couple of months is a lot of people asking us about Eclipse 4 support. In RAP, or right now, we have support for the RAP 3 for the 3.x workbench, but we have our own fork of the workbench code that we are maintaining and that we make RAP compatible. For Eclipse 4, we are not going to maintain a complete second workbench code set because they have better concepts for us. Our idea was to reuse the SWT renderer of Eclipse 4 and to make this SWT renderer as compatible as possible. We did a draft, or we were sitting together for 2 days last year just to see if it's possible yet or not yet, and we were running in many problems that need to be solved. Problems that the RAP project cannot solve by itself. There are some multi-user issues, for instance, that need to be solved on the Eclipse 4 platform level. But depending on our workload and depending on your interest as community, this could be a plan item for the next release next year. So if you're interested about Eclipse 4 support, it's not yet done. We're thinking about it, and if you're interested, please let us know. Then I promised that we are going to talk about the RAP Incubator project. Incubator projects at Eclipse are used for testing things, for experiments, and there's one rule: an incubator project may not release anything. So don't expect a full-flavored release from the incubator project, and we are not allowed to create a version 1.0 release, for instance. But we have lots of interesting things in there, in the RAP Incubator projects, components that are helpful, some components about, for example, a port of the table implementations from the Nebula project. Other ports from the Nebula projects are in there, and there are some other interesting components in there that we are going to show right now.
Okay. So the first component we're going to talk about is the CKEditor. The CKEditor is a pre-existing JavaScript project, not from us, and we use this to allow to give RAP a rich text editor. Sometimes you need one, and now we have one. This was basically meant as an example how to use the new custom widget API, and now you have an easy way to display and edit HTML in RAP. And actually, it's not yet in the incubator, but we're moving it there.
Yeah, yesterday I was talking with the IP legal team, and I think we are close.
Let's see. Okay, Nebula grid is a part of the Nebula grid from the Nebula project to the to make it a subset of that work on RAP. And you see some nice new features. We have groupable columns, a footer line, and you can change the height of individual items. And we may add new features as they are required and possible. And noteworthy about this project is that the additional code that this brings is only Java. The JavaScript code of this is entirely already in the RAP core project, because it's the same code that we use to render the tree and the table in RAP. Then we have the drop-down widget, which is a little lightweight helper for you to have a text assist to input text. You can use the drop-down widget by itself, which is the first example here. And if you use it like that, then the server needs to update, or the application needs to update the content, the suggestions here as you type. And it's doing a HTTP request every few milliseconds. Then we have the autosuggest, which is built on top of that. And the autosuggest actually moves all your possible suggestions to the client. And you can share that between many text fields. And the client code then filters as you type. This means you have an immediate feedback, and you do not have any HTTP requests in that. And you can also do like nice things like partial auto-completion. So if you just type the adventure, you can press enter, and then you have at least this part already. Okay, I think we can continue.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, okay, we have this example. You can, for example, also use columns. Then we have the FileDialog. The FileDialog is actually existing for like a few years now, but we recently completely revised the UI. It's a lot cleaner now. And we also added the feature that you can now select, in modern browser, select multiple files to upload at once. Which was previously not possible. So, and there's some, so of course there's more in the incubator project. I cannot get into every project. And there are also some nice RAP add-ons outside of the incubator project. For example, we have a Google Maps widget, which was now a few years old, but it's actually still working very nice. This one is based on the browser widget, doesn't use any RAP API, and therefore it also works on a normal SWT RCP application. And then we have the D3 charting widget, which is something my colleague Ralf did in his spare time just to toy with the new custom widget API. And this one is still a bit of a prototype, but it's very likely that we are going to build on that and make a more extensive version of that. And also quite noteworthy, in parallel to this talk, we have a nice talk from our colleagues about Tabris. And while Tabris itself is a commercial project, the server stuff of Tabris is actually open source. And since the next Tabris release, 1.2, I think, the Tabris UI, which is like a lightweight application framework, also runs in the browser, and you can download and use it completely for free. And it has a navigation concept which is inspired by modern mobile operating systems like iPhone and Android. And last slide. If you need to know where to get this stuff, the RAP homepage has an incubator site where you can get all the incubator components. And if you want to go beyond, there's a link at the top of the site to the RAP wiki where we list everything that we know about that works with RAP. And that's from our side, everything.
Yeah, thank you for joining our talk. And if you have questions, we are here now, or we are here the rest of the day.
I'm wondering, do you have the impression that the demand for RAP for E4, for pure E4 applications, how do you judge that? Are you judging that as low, medium, high at this point?
Medium. We see sometimes we see people asking on our news group. Sometimes it's people talking to us on conferences, and sometimes there's a demand of our customers, or our customers are asking in particular for E4 support.
And I would imagine it's longer term, and it sort of has to be part of the strategy around
Yes.
moving as well. Okay.
Our point of view was always that there are many things that need to be done in the platform. And that's our risk. If we put on our roadmap that we are going to provide E4 support in RAP, we rely on some functionality, on bugs that need to be fixed in the platform. And if we cannot achieve that they are fixed there, it's nice to have that we have E4 support on our roadmap, but we cannot make it happen. We need their help.
Well, first, to say that our context, we recently migrated from an SWT to two applications. It's quite a big application. And we tried RAP 2.0, and it's excellent. Really, really brilliant.
Thank you.
The way it doesn't compile unless it works, and when it compiles, it tends to work. It's just brilliant. So it's been a great technology for us to pick up. One thing that we've gone and done is we've put lots of singleton patterns in our code. Is there a recommended way of migrating away from those?
Yes, we had this session singleton approach. Maybe you've heard of this.
I haven't got into it yet. We've just done the kind of initial.
It's a kind of a wrapper that allows you to create a session-specific singleton.
Okay, thanks.
It's actually well documented in our developer's guide.
Yeah.
Okay. I need to look that up. Thanks.
It's a workaround, but singletons are always a problem, or static fields. Everything in this direction is.
Well, it's not a workaround, it's working quite well.
No, the session singleton is working. Yeah, sure, but these are the main pitfalls that you're running into if you're porting an existing SWT application. Because at that time you didn't think about multi-user. Other questions?
How about NUT table support? Are you planning something?
Now, the NUT table is quite similar to the Nebula grid in some aspects. So, since we already have the Nebula grid, it would be kind of pretty redundant to support both right now. So, we do not know right now, but we are certainly not going to maintain two different, very similar projects. So, either we stick with the Nebula grid, or we're going to, which I don't really think we're going to do, or we're going to abandon it and switch to the net table. But we're probably not going to, at least not from our side, just do it just for fun.
I've seen the auto-completion widgets. There are some similar widgets in the JFace area.
Yep.
So are they the same API on the server?
No, they're completely different APIs, and there's a good reason for that. I mean, If we could just use the same API again, we would, or perhaps we wouldn't, I don't know exactly, but we have, don't,
The auto completion.
The auto completion. Sorry. Yeah.
this one here, right? For example, since traffic is expensive, we do not want to, if you have a big list of possible suggestions, we do not want to push that to the client with every single text field that supports this. So we need to have a way to share the data between different text fields. And this was simply incompatible with the JFace API.
In your thinking, what would be a large application to write in RAP? So what is the largest thing that you have seen?
I think the Allianz application that Stefan showed yesterday in his presentation is one of the larger ones. He told something about having about 2,000 screens with many, many widgets on every screen. That's what we think is large.
If you want, I can show you afterwards.
I have read. I have gone through.
So if there are any more questions, you can come to us after. In the,
Yeah,
in between.
just try to catch us.
Okay.
Thank you.